The following is a Barrett Sports Media production. Every sports media star has a story. From the highs...
We are number one. We just grabbed every key demographic.
To the lows.
You're fired!
The path to success is always different. To help you learn more about the industry's top broadcasters, Barrett Sports Media brings you the Sports Talkers Podcast. Now, here's your host, Steven Strom.
Episode 26, Sports Talkers Podcast. Great to have you in. BarrettSportsMedia.com. Steven Strom here. Thank you for making me a part of your morning, afternoon, or night. We got Christmas Eve tomorrow. We're in the middle of Hanukkah, so hope everyone is having a good holiday. Today we've got LaVar Arrington, who spent 7 seasons in the NFL, was a 3-time Pro Bowler, played for the Washington Redskins at the time. Now it's the Washington football team. He transitioned into broadcasting, is the co-host on Fox Sports Radio on the morning program, Two Pros and a Cup of Joe with Brady Quinn and Jonas Knox. So it was a really fun conversation with LaVar. We talked about his transition into broadcasting on the field, into the mic, growing up in Pittsburgh, who he idolized, and then we get into who's got next, not as far as broadcasting, but maybe color analyst or a coach, whatever it may be. He gives a really good answer on who that just might be. We are always on BarrettSportsMedia.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Make sure to rate, subscribe, and review. That is always appreciated. And without further ado, let's get LaVar Arrington on the pod. All right, LaVar, always curious, I guess, just growing up in Pittsburgh. I know you were a tremendous football player, but I guess sports broadcasting-wise, who were some of the guys that you remember growing up on?
Yeah, I mean, again, there were a lot of legendary people that were associated with Pittsburgh football, Pittsburgh Steelers, Pitt Panthers. The first name that jumps out at me is Myron Cope, of course. People may know him for being the creator of the Terrible Towel. But he just had a very unique voice. This is Myron Cope on Sports. So there were a lot of personalities, Stan Savran, Paul Savran. There were some really, Andrew Stockey, Derek Gunn, just a lot. Tunch, who passed away, rest in peace, Tunch. Just a lot of guys. And then when I was coming through high school, there was a guy by the name of John Fedko. And Fedko created the Fedko zone, and he would fly over the games with his helicopter and stuff like that. So then, of course, radio is a big thing in Pittsburgh as well. So just, radio and print and even television was really big to Pittsburgh sports. And it was something that, I always enjoyed. I never thought that it would be what I'd end up doing, but it certainly was a time where I enjoyed the personalities. I felt like the personalities always brought to life the stories and the personalities of the players that were participating.
So was it while you were playing football? Was it after you were playing football? I guess who introduced you to the idea of, hey, LaVar, I know you're out of playing football, but here's a way you can still stay in the game?
Well, I started doing media while I was still playing in Washington. And I did a weekly show with Coach Thompson, John Thompson, and Doc Walker. And that was a lot of great reps. I also did television for Comcast Sportsnet back then. And I just always see, you got to understand the genesis of why I went into media was because I always felt like I was depicted incorrectly in the media.
How?
Because the way I played, sometimes we look at the way people play and we judge them based off of the characteristics that you take from them off of the field. And while I'm tenacious, I'm very bold in how I do things. I'm deliberate, can even be kind of forceful and demanding. But that's, for me, my work ethic and how I perform is very, very detailed towards what the goal and what the situation calls for. And a lot of times I think that people don't differentiate when you have to do your job versus who you are as a person. And I think a lot of people almost maybe drew the conclusion that I was something that I really wasn't, just based off of the way that I played the game of football. So for me, I always felt like if I wanted people to know who I was going to have to do it myself. And that was limited back when I was coming through. You didn't have all of the social media channels and all of the outlets to be able to put your own story out there. So that was a challenge, but I ultimately felt like that was something that I wanted to do for other athletes and other people as well, is make sure that there was a voice that's kind of working to accurately depict what these people are versus just this is a storyline and it fits what story I wrote or what story I'm running. And I just need a couple quotes or a couple sound bites from that person in order to solidify what it is that I'm doing. So that was for me, my biggest epiphany was I wanted to be a part of something because I saw that narrative continuing to play out. So and I knew that was a part of media, is you got to sell newspapers or you got to give viewers and all that stuff. So sometimes you sensationalize things or something seems that like that will hit more, and the controversy of something is going to hit more versus the content of one's, their true character.
Do you think you've changed that image?
I hope I've tried. If people are paying attention, they know. I mean, I wrote. I was a writer. I wrote for the Washington Post. I video blogged for the Washington Post. So if you just thought that I was just this valid football player that was out there, he's a barbarian, he's got half a brain, nothing's really connected to what he does other than athleticism and reactions, then you might need to take a look at what your intelligence level is if you've had an opportunity to experience what I bring to the table media-wise, and you still think that that might be the person that I am.
So I know you're more of a radio host and a journalist, but they kind of go two and two together in a lot of ways. I guess while you were a player, I know some guys get really upset if they get a question asked, or they sometimes don't have the best relationship with media. And sometimes we don't have that empathy to go in maybe the media's shoes at times. Do you think as you've transitioned, you've kind of sat and said, all right, like maybe I shouldn't. And I don't know if you had an experience where you went after a reporter, but I guess, do you look at reporters a little bit differently now, or journalists?
I respect everybody and I respect what your trade is. I always say it's a trinity. You got to have the athlete and the team. You have to have the fans and you have to have the media. Like you have to have those three for it to work. So I've never not respected it. I've only had issues with people that didn't respect the sanctity and the integrity of that trinity. You know what I mean?
Help us young journalists. Help us young journalists. What were some of those questions that you thought were just intrusive or you were upset with?
I don't think it's about the questions being intrusive. If I'm a young journalist, I would say building a relationship of belief, because nobody's going to fully trust one another, right? But if I'm being a journalist and I want to be impactful, I want to feel comfortable knowing that when I ask a question of somebody, they feel the belief that I'm asking this question to understand you, or to understand what you're thinking, to understand what you're feeling. If you come in and you interview or you say things in a manner of which it feels like there's an agenda, whether there is or not, if it feels like there's one, then there is one. That's kind of a rule of thumb for an athlete that's interviewing. If you come in asking questions where it's like, where'd that come from? Like, what exactly do you mean? And if your intentions aren't genuine to just get a story that is relevant, that's good. That's a good point too, is relevance of what it is that you're seeking, right? If it's not relevant, don't flip and ask it. You're playing yourself. You know what I mean? Like, even if that athlete were to play themselves and answer it, y'all both played yourselves. You know what I mean? And so now you burnt yourself with dudes that ain't gonna play themselves. You dig what I'm saying? Like
100%.
It's like, oh man, I got this one. You know what I mean? Like, I got this story. Like, great, I'm gonna report it or whatever it may be. But then now it's like everybody looking at you like, yeah, he's the one that got the homie. Like, I'm not fooling with him. You know what I mean? Or I'm not fooling with her. Like, whatever it may be, you might have thought you won, but you might have really lost. You know what I mean? So just keep it genuine, man. That's the key.
LaVar Arrington with us. Really good spot with him. We appreciate the time that he's given us. You've worked with several co-hosts and hosts and different people in radio and TV. I guess what's the overarching theme for broadcasters listening to this that you felt like you've worked with the best, or what do they have that some others from great to good have?
You know, I don't particularly think that when you see the ones that, like, I've worked with Jason Whitlock, I've worked with Colin Cowherd, I've worked with Chad Dukes in DC. Like I said, I worked with Coach Thompson and Doc Walker, Chick Hernandez. I've worked with a lot of talented guys in the media space, and I think they all have their own unique superpowers. I think what really separates the ones that I've seen, that like a Whitlock, who is very polarizing, very provocative in how he approaches and tackles issues, is their attention to what they're talking about and how it applies to them and their specific rooted beliefs. If you stay within the values of what you represent when speaking on topics and when speaking on the news, that to me is what separates the greats from the rest. Like, if you're reporting and you're just reading and you're a teleprompter guy, or you're just taking the information and delivering the information, that's very different. You want to show personality if you're a media person that way. But for me, I'm in talk radio, I'm in opinionated television, and different things like that. And if you're going to give opinions, then you want to give strong opinions based upon what you believe in.
So authenticity.
It still now goes back to authentic again, right? Like, yes, that's the key. That's the key to media. That's, like, to me, that's the key to life. You don't want to be deceptive. You don't want to be disingenuous. You don't want to be kind of dismissive or condescending. You really want to be, and if you are condescending or dismissive, be genuine in it. Be authentic. Well, come on, give it to me. I speak
authenticity. Yeah, authentic.
There we go. That's certainly what you want. Authenticity. Yeah, there you go. It is early, and I have spoke for like 3 hours before I did this. So excuse me, everyone, for messing up authenticity. I can't say it. All right. But yeah, that's, I think that when you come across as, we always, as a journalist or as a personality, someone who's in media, we always want the person that's in front of you to be authentic.
Now I'm confused. Authentic. I was like, you're combining two of them. Yeah.
You always want the person in front of you to be authentic.
Yes.
But you sometimes don't keep in mind that they want to see the person in front of them be authentic.
Right. Authentic. Right. LaVar's done a 3-hour show. He's getting the kids off to school. Anyone that's sitting here and saying LaVar Arrington can't say authentic, then he just wrote it down for people that are watching on YouTube. And he can say authentic. Let him screw up how many times. We don't care. It's a good spot with him.
Authentic.
LaVar.
I'm getting caught in between authenticity and authentic.
I know. I hear it. I'm just like, oh man, just separate the two. Go ahead.
So
finish
here's
it
the
up.
point, right?
Yep.
So just in case we missed it in my Freudian slips.
Yeah.
You want to be authentic to the person that you're interviewing or talking with, because that's what you're looking for from them. So it's a relationship of reciprocating.
100%. All right, 2 quick ones. Not really broadcast, kind of an overarching theme a little bit. Let's do just guys that you hear, NFL players in press conferences, or maybe that you just know personally, that you think can transition into broadcasting. Maybe like a future star, who's like a budding star that could be playing right now, that you know of, that, or you hear in press conferences that you're like, man.
Well, Mike Tomlin is a coach, but I would love to hear him transition into into media. I think his sound bites, and this isn't because I'm biased towards Pittsburgh, I promise this. If you listen to how Mike Tomlin interviews and the things he says, I think he is a stud for media, a lock stud to go into media. Are there any others that I look at and I'm like, yeah, there are a few pretty entertaining players out there, but the one that just jumps out at me like immediately is definitely Mike Tomlin.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. All right, last one. I'm 24, and I feel like this comes up every other couple of years, maybe even months at times, where you follow the NFL Instagram. We always see this post of Sean Taylor, and personally, I don't remember a ton of Sean. I know that you had a relationship with him. For people that are my age that just see the big hits, and we know how in the tragic death. Tell us a little bit about Sean Taylor, if you have any stories that you care to share.
I mean, Sean was different, and different in ways where when you get an opportunity, because I felt like for me, I was great. I felt like my greatness was something pretty significant. But when you're around greatness, and you got to keep in mind, early on in my career, I was around Deion Sanders, I was around Darryl Green, I was around Bruce Smith. I was around some really, really extraordinary football players and people. Sean was just a different breed of great, and Sean was a very, I'm trying to search for the right word, like a innocent. He had an innocence about him, like a I'm still growing type of way about him, like almost like a kid. He was like my kid brother. And I know people will remember, the football life where I cream pied him with the cream, and he never trusted the media after that, stuff like that. And that's what, again, back to the original points that I made, how the media will over sensationalize something that takes place, and rather than seeing the trueness and the nature. It happened. It sucked that it happened the way that it did. But you know what? It was a moment in time. I regretted it. But we had a really, really great relationship. And Sean was so naive and innocent in terms of just how focused and dialed in on what it was that he was doing, that you wanted to protect him. I wanted to protect him. I wanted to be there for him. I wanted to support him. And it was more so than my other teammates. Like, you look at some guys and it's like, you support a guy in this way, or you support a teammate in that way. It's different ways of supporting them. But Sean was like the kid brother, because you could see how great he was. You could see what he brought to the table, and you didn't want anything to disrupt that or keep him from that. And so we built a great relationship, built a great rapport with his eventual, mother, Big Jackie, the mother of baby Jackie. Our families still keep up together. Both daughters, my oldest daughter Marley, and Sean's daughter, little Jackie. We call her baby Jackie, even though she's a big girl now. She's a young adult. But baby Jackie and Marley still are on the same volleyball circuit. They see each other. So our bond even went beyond his departure from this world. We're still connected. And so I just always wanted to protect him. We were, me and my wife were mentors and guides to him and Big Jackie. And I took pride in that. I ultimately felt like, I took a little bit of ownership over feeling like I helped give him a blueprint as to how he could handle himself and how that could play a part in him growing and building his reputation in Washington. And, it's still to this day, it's sad and it's so unfortunate that we lost him. And no matter how we would have lost him, it's tragic that it was violent. If we would have lost him to a sickness or an illness, I don't think it would have been any less painful to lose Sean. So to me, I have always admired him. When I saw him at Miami, I admired him, couldn't believe that we were going to draft him and get a hold of him. And then when he got there to have the opportunity to play with him and get to know him was pretty significant for me in my life.
We really appreciate the vulnerability there from LaVar Arrington, and we appreciate you guys for tuning in, especially these last couple of months. We got this thing started. We're at episode 26. So appreciative of you guys, the listeners, and everyone at BarrettSportsMedia.com. We're going to go on a little bit of a hiatus. We're going to enjoy the holiday season. I'm not sure when we'll be back, but we will be back. You know we'll be back I think maybe 2 weeks is what Dimitri had told me, but we'll keep you updated. If you have anything for me, anything that you want to see more or less of as far as this show goes, at SSTROM3 on Twitter or on Instagram at SSTROM_ on Twitter. Always welcome for feedback and anything that you guys may have to add. So again, really thankful and grateful for all you guys that have listened. We've gotten some awesome feedback. We will talk to you after the holiday season. Enjoy it with your friends and family, and we will talk to you at some point in the coming weeks. For Steven Strom, BarrettSportsMedia.com. Have a great weekend.